You know when you walk outside on a really clear night and look up at the stars, you aren't actually seeing the night sky as it is right now.
Right, you're seeing the past.
Exactly. You are looking at light that left those stars millions of years ago, and it's finally reaching your eyes today.
It's a great analogy.
Yeah, and the more I look at the source material we are diving into today, the more I realize that human family trees, they operate on the exact same principle.
Oh, 100%.
So let me ask you, the listener, right now, how much do you really know about your own family tree?
Most people maybe know their grandparents' names.
Yeah, or like maybe you know what town your great-grandparents immigrated from. But imagine if you could trace your exact bloodline backward, generation by generation, for 14 centuries.
I mean, that is a scale of time that the human brain just isn't really built to process.
It really isn't.
We usually think of history as something that happens to nations or, empires. But the mission of our deep dive today is to explore history as something that happens to a single bloodline.
And it is wild.
It really is. We are unpacking this epic 14th century, 8-country saga. It's a story of survival, heritage, shifting identity, and it is all anchored by a single surviving document.
And what sparked this entire deep dive is a document that was updated just this year, right, in April 2026.
Yes, April 15th, 2026.
Right, by a man named Munir Sami. The file was literally just titled Sami Family Heritage.pdf.
Which sounds so modern and mundane.
It does, and the crazy thing is, Munir just went online and paid 2 scholars like $300 to translate and verify a 4-page, handwritten Urdu family tree.
A Sharja nasab.
Yes, a Sharja nasab, which was originally penned in 1796 and then updated a bit in 1987 and 1995.
And to think that a casual online transaction for a few $100s unlocks literally the world's oldest continuous lineage.
Tracing directly from the Prophet Muhammad in Arabia all the way to modern-day Sialkot in Pakistan. It is just staggering.
The contrast between, the mundane way this translation was commissioned and the sheer historical weight of the text is striking.
Because what they decoded isn't just a list of names.
No, not at all. It's not just a biological ledger of who fathered whom. It is a highly sophisticated legal and spiritual instrument.
Right.
In a world where borders were constantly being redrawn by the sword, this piece of paper was the ultimate proof of identity.
Well, let's figure out how this document actually functioned. Because the mechanics of survival here are fascinating.
They really are.
To understand this 13th century journey, I feel like we have to start where the original document was anchored. So, Sialkot, in the Punjab region, in the year 1796.
That is the perfect starting point.
Set the scene for us. What was happening in that part of the world at the end of the 18th century?
So it was essentially a massive power vacuum.
Because the Mughal Empire was falling apart.
Exactly. The once invincible Mughal Empire had effectively collapsed. You had Persian forces sweeping through, which destabilized the whole region.
It's total chaos.
Total chaos. And then you have the Bangi Sikh missiles.
Wait, what are those?
They were these regional military confederacies, and they were encroaching and basically taking control of the Punjab.
Okay, so Sialkot was basically a frontier of constant flux.
It was incredibly dangerous. It was a chaotic time to hold any sort of authority or land or public influence.
And right in the middle of this chaos is Hazrat Syed Nur Shah Wali.
Yes.
He died around 1784, so just as that Sikh encroachment was really tightening its grip.
Right.
And the text says he was the custodian of a spiritual seat, a local darbar, which his predecessor Hazrat Akbar Shah had established.
Correct.
But, okay, this is where my modern skepticism flares up a bit.
Lay it on me.
I mean, in the middle of an imperial collapse, couldn't literally any charismatic person just show up in a village, claim to have holy bloodline tracing back to the prophet, and use that to grab some social status or secure a land deed?
It's the most logical question to ask. And
Sure.
the fascinating thing is, the authors of the 1796 document actually anticipated that exact skepticism.
Really?
Yeah. They knew the empire was gone, so they couldn't rely on a central government to back them up anymore. Instead, they relied on this deeply layered system of verification.
Okay, how did that work?
The document provides a framework of 5 specific proofs of genuine Naqi Bukhari Syed lineage. To claim this identity without being immediately exposed as a fraud, you needed institutional backing, social consensus, and physical evidence.
Okay, the physical evidence is what caught my eye first. The document mentions the family held something called the Blessed Haba Mubarak.
Yes. The Haba Mubarak translates to a blessed garment or cloak. It was a sacred relic passed down through the family.
And that's a big deal.
A massive deal. We have to understand how communities functioned back then. A local population does not just hand over a sacred Islamic relic to an unvetted outsider.
Right, they'd run them out of town.
Exactly. The possession of the Hubba Mubarak meant the family had passed the ultimate test of generational community trust. It was the physical anchor of their legitimacy.
That makes total sense. It's like possessing the crown jewels. You don't get them unless everyone agrees you're the king.
Perfect analogy.
And speaking of kings, the document also says they had the throne. It calls Nur Shah Wali the Sajjada Nashin.
Right, which translates to the throne holder, or the hereditary custodian of a Sufi shrine.
So it's an official title.
Highly official. It was an intensely scrutinized institutional role. You only become a Sajjada Nashin if the existing network of Islamic scholars, the local civic leaders, and the broader community all formally accept you as the legitimate spiritual heir.
So you couldn't just fake it.
No, it requires a consensus that an imposter simply couldn't manufacture out of thin air.
Okay, so they have the physical relic and the local institutional backing.
Yeah.
But the document also outlines state-level verification.
Right. Yes. The Mughal estate papers.
Right. Actual formal land grants for a village near Sialkot called Guri Malian, though I know those papers meet a very dramatic end later on, which we will definitely get to.
Oh, we will.
But the document also says the family was formally registered in Delhi.
Right. Delhi was the Mughal capital. It acted as the central administrative database for verifying Sayyid lineages.
Like a central registry.
Exactly. If your family wasn't on the rolls in Delhi, your local claims were highly suspect. The fact that they were registered there proves their lineage was audited by the imperial bureaucracy before the empire fell.
Wow. And then there's the peer review aspect.
Yeah.
The author of this 1796 document, Haider Ali Shah, was writing within living memory of Nur Shah Wali.
Yes, he was.
And he refers to Nur Shah Wali's immediate ancestors, guys like Kark Shah, Kala Shah, and Jamiat Shah, with the title Siedi.
That is a crucial linguistic detail. Siedi is a highly affectionate, deeply respectful designation used exclusively for genuine, verified descendants of the Prophet.
So it wasn't just a generic honorific.
No, Haider Ali Shah wasn't inventing a myth centuries after the fact. He was recording the contemporary language used by the community.
That's amazing.
And if you need final proof of that community's acceptance, just look at the geography. An entire market in Sialkot was named Saki Aitabar Shah Market after their shrine.
Which is incredibly still standing today.
It is.
Think about that for a second. If you have to prove your identity today, you hand over a plastic card with a barcode, or you scan your fingerprint, right? You rely on a digital footprint.
Sure.
In 1796, your footprint was the social consensus of your neighbors, the possession of ancient garments, bureaucratic audits in a distant capital, and the literal naming of the town square. It is like a human blockchain of verification.
I love that phrase, a human blockchain. That is a brilliant way to conceptualize it. When you lock all 5 of those elements together, you get an unbreakable chain of provenance. Sialkot wasn't just a claim, it was an established fortress of identity.
It's incredible that they established this bulletproof identity in Sialkot, but the title they used to describe themselves, Naki Bukhari Syed, it doesn't belong to the Punjab.
No, it doesn't.
Bukhari is a geographical breadcrumb trailing thousands of miles to the west, all the way into Central Asia. So to figure out how Arab blood ended up ruling a shrine in Pakistan, we have to follow that breadcrumb backward.
Absolutely. The story obviously begins in Mecca with the Prophet Muhammad. It flows through his daughter Fatima and her husband Hazrat Ali. And the lineage specifically continues through their son, Imam Hussein,
who was martyred at Karbala in 680 CE.
Yes. The survivors of that massacre eventually settled back in Medina, but the mechanism that forces this family to leave Arabia entirely happens much later, in the 9th century, under the Abbasid Caliphate.
Right, the document highlights this as a period of intense persecution.
Yeah.
But why? The Abbasid rulers were Muslims too. Why were they hunting down the direct descendants of the Prophet?
It was entirely about political paranoia.
Like they were threatened by them.
Exactly. The Abbasids shared a broader lineage with the Prophet's family, but they knew that the direct descendants, the Imams, held far more spiritual legitimacy in the eyes of the public.
I see.
To the Abbasid caliphs, a spiritually legitimate Imam was a constant existential threat to their political power. And this paranoia really reached a boiling point with the 10th Imam, Ali al-Hadi.
What happened to him?
Around the year 848 CE, the caliph forced Imam al-Hadi out of Medina and relocated him to Samarra in modern-day Iraq. They essentially kept him under severe military surveillance.
So he was a political prisoner.
He was. And this forced displacement is the crucible that created the Naki designation.
Oh, because Naki means what exactly?
Naki literally translates to the descendants of al-Hadi. It became a survival tag. The intense persecution in Iraq forced his descendants to scatter eastward.
Just trying to get away from the caliph.
Right. They pushed through the Azerbaijani corridor, seeking safety at the fringes of the empire where the caliph's armies couldn't easily reach them.
And that brings us to Bukhara in Central Asia. They fled the political center of the Islamic world and found refuge in the mountains and steppes.
And that geographic refuge becomes permanently attached to their name, the Bukhari identity.
Wow.
It is in Bukhara that the lineage crystallizes around this monumental figure named Sayyid Jalaluddin Sirkposh Bukhari. He was born in 1190 CE.
And he's the one who eventually leaves Central Asia, right?
Yes, he is the patriarch who carries this bloodline out of Central Asia, migrating down into Sharif in the Punjab region in the year 1244 CE.
I am looking at the map of this migration in my head, and it is brutal.
Oh, it's terrifying.
To get from Bukhara down to the Punjab plains, Jalaluddin and his family had to cross the Khyber Pass. They had to navigate the unforgiving terrain of Afghanistan and Kashmir.
And they were doing it on foot and by caravan.
The story takes a very sharp ideological turn.
It does.
We've mapped the ancient journey, but how does this legacy translate to the modern family members who commissioned this translation in 2026?
The bridge to the modern era relies on a man named Hazrat Misbah-ud-Din Sami. He was a great-grandson of the Sialkot anchor, Nur Shah Wali.
Right.
And he was coming of age in a much different cultural climate. The family document describes the spiritual drift happening around this time.
What kind of drift?
It notes that some distant cousins had started adopting what the text calls backward, peer-based interpretations of the Suhrawardi Sufi order.
Which honestly happens a lot in these long lineages, right?
Oh, all the time.
The original scholarly or spiritual purity degrades over generations into local superstitious saint worship where people are just revering the tomb rather than the teachings.
Exactly. The focus shifts from theology to local folklore and ritual. But Misbah-ud-Din rejected that trajectory. As a teenager, he took a radically different spiritual path by converting to Ahmadiyat.
Which was a massive shift.
Huge. He left Sialkot, moved to Kadian, and became deeply embedded in this new spiritual community. He eventually even became the adopted son of the first Khalifa, Khalifa Masih I.
And this is where the ancestral paperwork, the Sharja nasab, becomes central to the story again, doesn't it?
Yes. Misbah-ud-Din presents this ancient lineage to the first Khalifa.
And what does the Khalifa do with it?
Well, the first Khalifa was a profoundly educated scholar. He had extensive knowledge of global genealogy, so he didn't just glance at the paper. He researched the lineage thoroughly.
He vetted it.
Yes. He recognized the deep Semitic roots tracing back to the Prophet, the journey through Bukhara, and the significance of the bloodline. And based on that research, he formally conferred upon Misbah-ud-Din the title Sami.
Validating the Semitic origin.
Exactly.
And Misbah-ud-Din takes this title and completely reshapes his family's modern legacy.
He becomes a pioneer Ahmadi missionary.
Yeah, he travels to London, he helps inaugurate the London Mosque, and crucially, he serves as the spiritual teacher to Dr. Abdus Salam.
The physicist.
Right, the guy who would go on to become Pakistan's first Nobel Prize-winning physicist. This ancient lineage steps directly onto the modern global stage of science and theology.
It proves that history isn't static. The lineage didn't just rest on the laurels of its Sialkot shrines, it actively engaged with the modern world.
Which brings me to the most baffling, frustrating moment in this entire document.
I think I know what you're going to say.
We mentioned earlier that the family possessed original Mughal estate papers.
The Garuri-Mullian land grants.
Right. The actual land grants from the empire that prove their ownership of the village, like the ultimate historical primary source.
Yep.
And a family member named Siraj-ud-Din threw them into a fire and burned them.
He did.
Why on earth would someone destroy their own primary source history?
From the perspective of an archivist, it is agonizing.
It hurts my soul.
But the document explains the underlying theology behind his actions. Siraj-ud-Din burned those land deeds because he believed they represented worldly attachment and feudal landlord status.
Being a Jagirdar, right?
Exactly. He felt that hoarding material wealth and imperial land grants directly contradicted the spiritual asceticism taught by the Sultan of Rum and the principles of Ahmadiyat.
Which emphasized absolute reliance on God, not on inherited worldly estates. So the very concept of a land deed became a spiritual conflict for him. He felt that holding onto the empire's paper compromised his soul.
Precisely. It is a brilliant illustration of the tension between historical preservation and living theology. Siraj ad-Din wasn't destroying history out of ignorance. He was making a deliberate, physical sacrifice of his material wealth to ensure his spiritual purity.
Wow.
The family document records this not as a tragedy, but as a profound act of faith.
It just shows how heavy these identities are to carry.
They are incredibly heavy.
I mean, we started this deep dive looking at a translated PDF. And what did we find? A single bloodline that begins in the deserts of Mecca, survives the political paranoia of the Abbasid Caliphate in Samarra, adopts the Bukhari name as a shield in Central Asia, and crosses paths with ancient Israelite cousins in the Afghan mountains.
A bloodline that anchors itself in Sialkot, using sacred relics and community trust as currency, before intentionally burning its own imperial wealth to pursue a modern spiritual revival that eventually mentors a Nobel laureate.
It is the story of human civilization encoded in a single family tree.
It really is.
It makes you look differently at the concept of archives and legacy. We've spent this entire time talking about a fragile, handwritten piece of paper from 1796 that somehow managed to survive the collapse of empires, religious shifts, and just the simple passage of time to tell this incredible story.
Which leaves us with a really necessary question about our own era.
What do you mean?
Well, today we don't rely on ink and paper or community consensus. Our entire lives, our memories, our family histories, they are all stored as digital data on cloud servers and hard drives.
Servers that require constant electricity, and technology that becomes obsolete every 10 years.
Exactly. This physical document survived 14 centuries of war and migration. It forces us to wonder, in 300 years, will our descendants have a beautiful, translated map of our lives to look back on?
Or will it all be gone?
Right. Will we be the generation that effectively burned our own estate papers simply by leaving our history trapped on forgotten, obsolete machines?
That is heavy. You look up at the night sky and you see ancient light because it had the power to travel through the dark. Keep looking up and make sure your own history is built to survive the journey.